That should be an international bestseller.
This is probably a great time to do it, a second edition, because this is really coming to the forefront of people's worlds again.
That's why I'm on this call. Now you've just helped me focus what I want to do next. I'm going to redo the NLP and the mind control techniques using the secrets of the FBI and the CIA. The things they didn't want me to teach, I could just.
Oh, that's it.
That's it.
I didn't have to sign an NDA or anything.
That's the money. That's the money one there.
Yes.
They didn't want me to teach, but I can now. Been slapping longer.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good day. This is the Connect Unplugged Podcast number 37 with world-renowned NLP master trainer, Dr. William Horton, who's streaming in all the way from Florida. And I'll let Kallum share with the world a few words about you.
Thanks for being here, Will. We have Dr. William D. Horton here with us today, a renowned NLP expert and master trainer, but also psychologist. He's well known around the traps as the world's best hypnotist. He's the founder of the National Federation of Neuro-Linguistic Programming and has dedicated over 4 decades to teaching NLP, hypnosis, performance enhancement, and business communication worldwide. As a licensed psychologist and master certified alcohol and drug counselor, Dr. Horton has extensive experience in substance abuse treatment, having managed both inpatient and outpatient centers, as well as psychiatric units in prisons. His passion for NLP and hypnosis stems from personal experience using these techniques to overcome alcohol addiction and achieve success in martial arts and acting. Dr. Horton is a prolific author with notable works including Mind Control Secrets, which I'm looking forward to getting into, Quantum Psychology, NLP for Sales, and Primary Objectives. His articles are regularly featured in the Journal of Hypnotism, and his courses and workbooks are acclaimed for their accessibility. In addition to his contributions to psychology and counseling, Dr. Horton is a black belt in karate, having won multiple tournaments and has acted in over 100 stage plays and films. He continues to offer training and resources through NLP, aiming to advance education in mind sciences, particularly for those dealing with addictions. Dr. Will, thank you for being here with us today.
Wow, what an intro.
Glad to be here. Hard to sit through when people read your bio. Because I always think, damn, I've been around this a while.
Well, you look so young. I'm questioning how on earth you've managed to get it all done, but I guess we'll dive into that in our time together. Massive welcome. I've heard your name through the NLP world for many, many years, and Kallum and I are super happy and really pleased to be able to share you and your story with our community. And where we like to normally start, Will, is at the beginning. Are you born you're in Florida now? Were you born in the US? Are you American?
Yeah, I was born in Indiana. And when I grew up in Indiana, just outside of Chicago. And I spent a lot of my time in Mississippi in a small town. My parents were originally they grew up on farms.
Right.
Then they moved. But I grew up in a real Midwestern, blue collar thing, just like you have in Australia and other places. And the first time I got involved or got fascinated with hypnosis, I was in high school. All right. Okay. And I went and I read a book on hypnosis, and it was called Hypnosis for Change. I still think it's in print. It's a very simple little book, talk a little bit about hypnosis. I think it was written in the late 60s.
Mm-hmm.
And it had a couple of scripts, like a relaxation script that had weight. And it was just one of those books. Well, I read that book and I thought it was fascinating. And so I started playing with it, right? Because mainly for sports, I was, played American football and ran track and did that. So I'm like, this would be great. I got into it. It just made sense to me when they talk about that. So I hypnotized somebody, a couple people, and to be honest with you, scared the hell out of me. Absolutely scared the hell out of me, right? Because everything it was saying, I was doing this thing and raising your arm, everything, and I was just reading the script, right? And so it kind of set me back. So I didn't really do anything with it, but that was the first experience. But I did make a bunch of self-hypnosis recordings. And this was back in the day.
Were you still in high school when you did that?
Yes. I like a sophomore, junior in high school.
Right.
And so I made a recording. And back then, this will shock you young guys, it was little reel-to-reel tapes. They didn't even have cassettes yet. This is how long ago.
Yeah.
And so I listened to it, and I think it worked. So it was always in the back of my mind. But, I never wanted to like become a therapist or help people do anything like that. The only two things I wanted to do was either become a pilot or an actor. That was it. That was like, and even though I said I wanted to be an actor in high school and all that, never did any plays, didn't hang around with the theater world. I just played football, drank beer, and just tried to stay out of trouble so I could stay in school to finish that.
Yeah, right.
And so after I got out of high school, I joined the Army the Army to become a pilot, helicopter pilot. And
So, for your pilot dreams, was that in
Yeah,
line with?
wanted-
Yeah.
so I went to do that, right? And I was doing pretty well. And two things happened. A, I started drinking too much, right? Kind of runs in my family. Not that you ever see that down under or in other places, right?
Yeah.
And
We hate beer and other drinks down here. Cocktails. Ugh.
never going to do that. No, and they basically closed the flight school, right? Because Vietnam had just ended and they had way too many pilots, right? So I kind of bounced around different things in the military, and got hurt my legs. So as I was getting out, and they offered to help me with my drinking, but I said, no, I don't have a drinking problem. I got an Army problem. Once I get out of the Army, I'll be fine, right? So I got out of the Army and decided, like I said, I wanted to be an actor. Now, mind you, I'd never seen a play.
Right.
I'd seen movies, of course, right? But I'm like, I want to do this. I want to learn how to act. And so I ended up getting accepted into an acting school called the American Academy of Dramatic Arts. It's like the Harvard of the acting world in America, right?
Okay.
It's up there with, Goodman, London School of Drama. And the only reason I got in had
how did
absolutely
you get in?
nothing to do with talent. Nothing to do with talent. Is I showed up as I was considered a Vietnam era vet, and they needed veterans to go, right? So I tell people, as they would say here, I don't know what the Australian version would be, I was an affirmative action baby.
Right.
Like you fit the slot, here, go in there.
Yeah.
So-
Okay.
So, I get to this acting school, and all these people had done plays and movies, a lot of, sons and daughters of very famous people were in the school. And I started studying it and really getting into it. And I went back to I went and made some more self-hypnosis tapes, and was getting into it and was doing pretty well. I'll make this fast. And then the drinking kind of screwed that up, right? I was starting to get auditions and callbacks. And, I had a callback for a television series this was what I was in LA, and I got drunk and missed it. Just forgot.
Yeah. Right. Just missed it. You fell asleep. You just sort of you were.
Or I
were
didn't
out.
stop drinking. I got to get up and go to do this audition. And I just, anyway. So again, I didn't think I had a drinking problem. So, I was leaving LA and going to go to New York, to get back into theater,
Yeah.
and, what happened was, I kind of came face to face with the fact that the drinking was the problem.
Mm.
And really, it took me a while. Now I understand it from this viewpoint, where actually drinking wasn't the problem. It was the answer to my problem, which the problem was low self-esteem, low self-worth, never felt good enough, all of that kind of stuff. So I ended up going through treatment, alcohol treatment at the Veterans Administration. And my life started to change. I put the drink down. I was doing pretty well and trying to figure out what I'm going to do next. And I had a couple issues, and a counselor came in, and this was like 81, something like that.
Okay.
And she did a technique that now I would know would be hypnosis with some NLP techniques, right? Kind of buried in. And I remember I was in there and walking through this process, and suddenly everything made sense, right? The therapy that they were trying to do, the 12-step program, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous, made total sense. And I always liked it, but it just like all clicked in. And from that moment on, my life radically changed, right? I'm like, haven't really had a thought or a desire to drink since. And I started doing volunteer work at detox centers, alcohol and drug detox centers. So I didn't set out to do this. It was like, hey, I'll just do this. It's good. Go and help people do this, right? And in some of the places, they call me witch doctor because I'd start hypnotizing people. I hadn't really been trained. I just read scripts.
Just read the script.
And it was going well. And I had some money to go back to school. So I went back to school, finished my degrees, theater degree, and then a sociology degree. And then I still had money. So I went back and got my master's in psychology and my doctorate. And while all that was going on, I got back in and I was doing theater, because like a lot of people with problems, especially with alcohol, I said, it's not the alcohol, it's that, I'm hanging around the wrong people in theater and Hollywood, it's like, it took me a long time to realize, no, I was the bad influence when I was around those groups. I was the guy who showed up rehearsal with a case of beer, and you can't do that till you're rich and famous. When you're nobody, it'll get you fired. And so anyway, my life turned around and, it took me down this path. And the only reason I started doing NLP trainings, and then, and it's like, and then I really wanted to study this as I was starting the psychology, and it was easier to find NLP trainings than hypnosis trainings.
So back in the early 80s, it was easier to find an NLP training than it was a hypnosis training.
Yeah, because you had Tony Robbins break out with Unlimited Power and Awaken of the Giant Within, those old books that I still recommend people. In fact, if you've ever read Unlimited Power, it's the old basic NLP program in print. Circle of excellence, how to, I call it meta model, how to gather information. What do you want? What would that do for you? All of the stuff that we know, it was there in print, and it was being used in business. And so you could find trainings in NLP. So I started taking the NLP training. And it wasn't until the late 80s that like hypnosis started to get real popular again. As we were talking before we got started, back in the late 80s, early 90s, you had two camps. You were either a hypnotist or an NLPer.
Right.
People now couldn't imagine that, but it was like, I gave a talk on NLP at the National Guild of Hypnotists. I think it was 90 or 91. And people were like, I'm surprised they're letting you speak on that. I mean, they just, it was that old school. Now it's kind of folded into, it's mishmash. Right? Yeah. But so that's kind of, and the only reason I started to do NLP trainings is they wanted an NLP training at the National Guild of Hypnotists. They knew I did NLP and I'd been around it. And I said, sure, I'd love to teach it. And so I started teaching it and found I really enjoyed teaching it from a showbiz perspective. The minute I started, if you're going to do this, it's a show, right? Why is Tony Robbins he's probably a billionaire now, right? And most people in that world don't make any money, right? I don't know if you guys ever been to a Tony event, but it's a show.
It is. It's a concept.
Right? And a lot of the good NLP trainers back in the day, I never sat through the whole thing, but was asked to sit through parts. Like some of the old Ted James trainings, they were they had show aspects. They made it fun. They did things. You moved around, right?
Yeah.
And so I went into it like that. And so just one thing led to another. I continued to do my theater on the side. A lot of community theater down here in Florida. They used to have a lot of what they call dinner theater, professional theater. And then a few years ago, I started doing films. And so that's just kind of my journey. And most of my clinical work was usually it would start with addictions because that was my calling, if you will, and then kind of mashed out from that, right? In fact, I'm still a consultant at an addiction treatment center. In fact, I did a training for them this morning on EFT, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of cool stuff, and uh, that's just been my journey. And I guess the other thing I'd throw in there, I would, because I believe things happen for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
I was in Washington, D.C. doing a little training, and it was pretty good training. I always did smaller trainings, but I had a few people there, and I just knew they worked for the government. I had no idea who they worked for. And they come up and said, "Hey, would you like to meet the, they call it ASAC, the Assistant Special Agent in charge of the Behavioral Science Unit at the FBI?"
Okay.
And I'm like, "You want me to cut you a check now? Is there any particular place you want me to place my lips?" I mean, yes, I would love to walk into the FBI Academy where the cutting edge of how things go. So I got to go and meet the head of the Behavioral Science Unit, and they invited me to come to a training, right? They used to call it hostage negotiation. Now it's called crisis negotiation, and their profiling course.
Oh, that would have been so interesting.
Yeah. And it was kind of cool is I'm like, "Well, how much would you cost?" "Oh, no, it's cool." Right. I stayed in the barracks, and, they had a nice setup. And I'm like, "This will be interesting." And the only thing they wanted from me was feedback from my viewpoint of the world with the hypnosis and the NLP and this and that. So I got to sit through what I would still say is the best training organization I'd ever seen in my life. Right. And how they structure trainings. And I got to sit through it and learn a lot of really cool stuff that I didn't know before, right? And so this was like back a long time ago, and I never really taught it. It was a class I never thought I would teach. It's like, I use it this way. You got a minute? Let me tell you this one, right? I always say, if you learn NLP, right, or hypnosis too with it, but if you learn, NLP, how to gather information, the mirroring and the matching, and, rep systems. Are you visual, auditory, kinesthetic? You do this, right? Do you move a little bit of meta programs, the simple ones? Do you move toward a goal or away from pain? Are you big picture person, or are you detail oriented? Are you internally motivated, externally motivated? Just that right there is like an X-ray, right? And the FBI had that, right? In fact, the scary part when I went there is they knew everything about me. Whereas I'm thinking, I'm at the FBI Academy. I'm pretty sure, that they have access to everything. So it was kind of cool. So they had a lot of the stuff I'd done before, that a couple of people that had been in my class, I didn't know they worked for the FBI. So they took the stuff, they put it in this training. So it was like the visual, the auditory, the kinesthetic, active listening skills. And I'm like, this is cool. And then they taught some, especially on the profiling side, some stuff I just fell in love with, and deception detection. And I'm like, this is really powerful. And the difference would be if you learn NLP and hypnosis, everybody's taking it. I will make the statement, you're better prepared to deal with people than 90% of the psychologists.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's more on a practical level. This is how it works. Right. So, because it's like an X-ray. It's like we've gotten an X-ray of how you think.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you add in the next level of this stuff with, profiling and decision strategies and deception detection, it's like an MRI. You're not just getting the framework like an X-ray. You can see the bones and you understand it. This is like, oh, this is why you're doing what you do. This is how you do what you do. This is this. And the leverage points on this, I know you guys do a lot with business. It's like the leverage point is astronomical.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So you can get people, because that's what they do at the FBI. They teach you how to get a confession. They teach you how to motivate somebody into being a confidential informant. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, how can you get a mob guy to become a confidential informant? Right. And so they were talking about, well, you got this, you got this, you got this. And I'm sitting there going, And I thought NLP was powerful, right? And the fact they're standing there with a 9mm on their hip, it's kind of.
This has always been something that I've been really curious about from the beginning of my journey with NLP and hypnosis. And it, when I have gone back and done research on the people that were quite prominent when it became big in the States with Milton Erickson and those people, and even before that, there seems to be an element or a big section of the field that went dark. And by dark, I mean went underground or went, into the 3-letter agencies. You said then that the techniques that they had were incredibly powerful, and you thought NLP was, but then looking at what they had at their repertoire, it was so advanced. Can you speak to that process? Do you think that a lot of the information went dark at different points throughout the history of not just behavioral psychology, but also general psychology and more influencing people or controlling one's mind? Do you think a lot of that stuff has been dark? And what did you see when you were working with those guys?
Great question.
Well, one thing I've always noticed, right? Because when you start to teach this, people go, you shouldn't be allowed to teach this, right? Milton Erickson did not like this stuff out in the public. I never joined the subgroup of the American Psychological Association, which I'm a member, for hypnosis. And people ask me why. One of the rules is if you're a member, you cannot teach hypnosis or these kind of techniques to anyone other than a licensed professional, right? Or do stage shows. So I'm like, But, the big question always is this information just at the basic level, the x-ray stuff from the NLP back in, which really the basics hasn't changed from the 80s on, in my opinion. And the big question is, can this stuff be manipulative? Can you use this to manipulate people? Well, hell yeah. That's why a lot of people want to learn it. It's like, when I talk to people and they find out I'm a psychologist, it's general. Somebody will say, oh, my kid wants to be a psychologist, or so-and-so wants to be a psychologist. And I always say, well, there's only 2 reasons people want to become a psychologist, especially in high school. One, they think they're crazy. Right? And they think going to go get, and unfortunately, a lot of those people do become psychologists, but they think that by learning this information, it will fix them.
Yeah.
And the second group is they just want to mess with people. They want to control people. So I was talking to some kid and he goes, yeah. I go, well, then study marketing.
Yeah.
Right? They can convince us to spend $15,000 on a Rolex that keeps worse time than my Apple Watch, for God's sakes, right?
Yeah.
And yet that's manipulative. But so people want to learn that. Now, when I teach it, I always went in with the idea, I'm just teaching information. Conor may use it to create a cult. And I studied cults, right? Fine. I'll help you build the biggest cult you want. It's kind of cool to me, right?
Yeah.
Kayla may want to use it for sales or marketing or become a therapist. I have no idea what you're going to do with the information, right? You're just going to get the information. And I've seen a lot of people over the years, and I know you guys seen it, is they come in thinking they're going to use it to manipulate. And when they see the power of it, they end up becoming, therapists or successful salespeople.
Yeah.
Right? Because it's like, oh, this stuff works. I don't have to manipulate. I can find out, can I help you? Can I help you do what you want to do?
The number of people.
Yeah.
The number of people we have manipulated to help believe in themselves is incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And people come in our trainings, a lot of them underneath it, they have that thing, I'm not good enough. I'm not,
Yeah.
and that. And so, so I think a lot of people went dark because they found other niches. A couple people I knew were very good in the NLP back in the late 80s, early 90s, and they kind of disappeared. And people go, wonder what happened. And I'm like, well, one guy became executive vice president of sales for a Fortune 500 company with a 7-figure income with stock options.
Yeah.
Why would he want to schluck around the world doing an NLP training? Even if you're doing the bigger trainings, it's like, one of my good friends, the guy named Kevin Hogan, or was a good friend, we're still we still talk. It's not that we're enemies. In fact, we wrote a book together. We did trainings together. He carved out a niche in persuasion engineering. He calls it, he wrote the book, The Psychology of Persuasion. Right? And it's been a bestseller off and on for, I think, 25 years now.
Mm.
And so, here we think he disappeared. While I was talking to him, he would go to Poland and the Baltic states and teach. He goes, the smallest class I do there is probably 2,500 people. So people thought he disappeared. He's like, well, why would I want to come here and try to do another training? He was from Minnesota, in Minneapolis, when I can just jump on a plane, go there, and it's like a Tony Robbins seminar, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people use the material, and
That's
then,
right.
but the sad part, what I've seen is I hope you don't mind the language, is the bullshit, right?
Yeah.
These people swearing they've done this, they've done that, they'll teach you the inner secrets of all this dark mind control stuff.
Yeah.
Now, mind you, I'll go buy the books or I'll watch the videos, but rarely is it anything good, right? And I always hear people talk about, they've worked with one of the agencies, the three-letter agencies, the CIA, FBI, NSA, one of those places. DIA is the scary group, by the way. But from being around it, I'm like, I kind of doubt that.
Yeah.
It does. I think there does seem to be some sort of information that is being passed down, behind closed doors, because you look at someone like, for instance, Sigmund Freud, right? His son or nephew or grandson was Edward Bernays, who came up with the idea of propaganda. And then you look at, his great nephew, Edward Bernays, is the co-founder of Netflix, Mark Randolph. And you're talking about carving out niches. It does seem that, like you said, and maybe your explanation is the more logical one, that, these people have just found out different niches where they'll be more profitable than would have been, say, running, their own one-on-one coaching business, or they would be running an NLP or hypnosis training company. Maybe that is the answer.
Oh yeah. And everybody forgets, when they were starting all this stuff back in the early 70s, I guess, Bandler and Grinder and that group is, what they were really doing was getting together and getting high. And no, it's fine. It was Berkeley, California in the late 60s, early 70s. And then they would do hypnosis experiments and this and that.
We had Frank Rieslick on last week, and he was pulling back the curtain for us.
Well, yeah, it's like, I tell people, they go, really? I go, yeah, talk to what was it? I just forgot his name. You just mentioned him. He was
Frank
Rieslick. Yeah. He was with that original group. It was, and from what I've heard, it was crazy. I got in with the second group, right? And what really launched them was one of that core group was Steve Andreas.
Yeah.
Right. Well, his grandfather was Fritz Perl.
Oh, right? Wow. Was he related to Fritz Perl? I didn't know that.
Right. Oh,
in fact, I think that was his last name, but he took Connie Ray's last name, right?
Wow.
The Andreas. And so Fritz Perls was good friends with Virginia Satir.
Yeah.
That was because I'm always going, how did they get these introductions with Fritz Perls and Virginia Satir and, and all this stuff? Well, if you got it's like everything, it's who you know. And so that's how they got started. And then they could go and decode, how, because I think NLP is more like Virginia Satir and Fritz Perl stuff than it is anything else. But my question always is, and I heard all these stories about how they studied with Milton Erickson, Erickson. And I'm sitting there going, to the day he died, he did not like lay therapists.
No.
That was one of his fundamental rules, right? But I would say this is the fact that what cooler way is if you just got to meet him, so you got some street cred, like how people pay all that money to get a picture, right? And then Milton Erickson dies, and he didn't write all that much himself.
No.
He wrote a couple co-authored books, but he was mostly just training psychologists doing that. So then the minute he dies, the Bandler and Grinder could say, well, according to Milton.
Mm.
Well, if Milton told you, there's
I've
no
heard that
check.
one.
Yeah, there's no fact checkers.
So if I kick it, you guys could say, as Will Horton used to say. And they came up with some really, now, the stuff they came up with, Bandler, Grinder, my favorite in that little group was David Gordon, right? And Steve Andreas. They came up with some brilliant stuff because they were going into that field from the outside looking in. In fact, what is it? They say a lot of the biggest breakthroughs in any science or discipline happened by people who were not trained in that discipline
Yeah,
originally.
coming in from an outside perspective.
So they came, and so it's like fascinating to me.
It sounds like it's a bit of the a bit Monty Python, how all that creativity was inspired.
Sure. We saw. Frank definitely didn't hold back with the stories last week. It was actually quite entertaining, his podcast. So you said you came in on the second wave. They had a
Can you
name.
explain that? Yeah.
Yeah, they had a name for the first group. It was the meta team. And you said that you came through on the first phase. Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged Podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting, the Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely. What we love doing is lighting people up and having them realize that their future is bright and, most importantly, making a difference in this world. So we are very excited to be able to share this with you.
If you want to turn every prospect into a Forever Client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.
Yeah, a little bit right after when Tony Robbins got trained, of course, his big breakthrough was the fact he was like the assistant to Jim Rohn.
That's
So
right.
he learned to do seminars, how to put together workshops, and he also knew to get Werner Erhard, right? How to create the S system. So Tony goes and he learns NLP and he was making money. So I forget who trained him originally, but he did go talk to Bandler and Grinder and do all that stuff. And when he looked at it, like you say, differently, it's like all of us that were getting into it, we're starting to do these little trainings and do this and do that. Ted James came in, did his timeline stuff. Everybody's doing this stuff. And Tony came in and went, you know what? There's more money in just doing this to people than there is trying to teach people how to do it.
Yeah.
And he ran it like a Jim Rohn seminar.
Mm.
And he brought in the showbiz aspect, right? And he brought in the
music.
Werner Erhard, I'll get you in, because when I first learned it, there were no levels. There was no basic NLP, no master, no trainer.
Yeah.
You just kind of took the training and did whatever the heck you felt like, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's, what I find fascinating with this stuff, but how, and I think we're just scratched the surface, because a lot of the things that we, the neurologist, the neuropsychologist in me says, the stuff we've said for years, now we know it's true just from the brain imaging and all this other stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Your mind doesn't know the difference between a real and vividly imagined event. People going, yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then now we know it's true.
It's like,
and again,
it's obvious
today,
truth for people too.
Yeah,
It's funny because in the past they would ridicule you for it.
yeah, in fact, the clinical side still has that. I was doing an in-service training for this addiction group, and everybody there were mental health counselors, a couple social workers, and a couple of alcohol drug counselors who were pretty well trained. And I started talking about the mind and the vividly imagined event. Don't know the difference. And they're like, no. And I'm like, so I just did the lemon test on them, the classical hypnosis lemon test. And they're like, that's cool. I said, I've done these horror movies that scare the shit out of you. And even if you're watching it, if it's a good movie, I'm not really dead. They didn't put the knife through my head in real time, but in the movie they did. If you have that shock response, right, that's your mind doesn't know the difference. So yeah, I love that stuff. And now, I can imagine what they teach. Or they're beginning to decode like the FBI, how they would, some of them were how they profile. I wonder if they're doing the science behind what part of brain, what's the difference between somebody that's driven by significance or power?
Yeah.
or acceptance or being intelligent, right? Whatever your social need is, I'll bet you it lights up a certain part of your brain.
Yeah, it would. Yeah.
Well, before we skip over it, I do want to, because what we've found over the past episodes that we've been doing, we're kind of almost mapping out a little bit of the prehistory of NLP in the field through the conversations that we're having. It wasn't an intention that we had, but it seems to be something that's developing. So I would like to hear from you what it was like in that second phase group. You talked about some big names like your name, Dr. Tad James, Tony Robbins, maybe even Steve Andreas, those type of guys. Who was in that group, and what was the culture and what was the feel like? It felt like it went very much from these guys who had created this incredible new field, and maybe they were doing all these experiments and testing things out, collecting as many guinea pigs as they can. But then it kind of felt like there was a bit more structure around it when you came in, and maybe there was, because you talked about levels of trainings. There was trainings that were, you could get certified at different levels. Could you talk more about how that looked and how it grew and who was around at the time and how things kind of played out?
Yeah, it's like, in those early trainings, they didn't have manuals, right? They would have like photocopy, or back then mimeographs, right? You would get a few each day you went to class. And the original basic, if you want to call it basic NLP training, was probably, 8 to 12 days.
Yeah.
It wasn't that long. Because they were very fast about, like, especially David Gordon, who taught like therapeutic metaphors. A lot of I'm trying to remember some of those. Most of that group's dead. The people that came, that sounds cold, but they passed on. They've mentioned whatever.
Yeah.
Right. Dilts, he was a lot of fun. Have you had him on your call yet?
Yeah, we've had Dilts on. He was amazing. He was very
cool. Yeah. Well, see, and then when Dilt kind of guys got involved, then it became more structured. They brought in a methodology behind it. Bandler, Grinder, David Gordon, some of these, it was like, just like, hey, let's see what happens. Let's play with this. Let's do this, this, and this. Well, that's great if you're Bandler or Grinder or David Gordon, right? Or Steve Andreas. And, like Steve, his wife, Connie Ray, was very detail oriented, right? Because I think when we had all these big picture people at the beginning, well, Elon Musk can't be Elon Musk unless he has the detail people that go, well, this is how we're going to build a car. And so then it became much more structured, right? Which part of me liked it, but I kind of liked, like, nobody had a clue what the hell was going to go on when you got started.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. There was no consistency with what was being taught. Maybe the what was taught on each day. No curriculum.
And then as it got popular, it splintered. It just splintered. People went off because they're like, well, I don't want to keep giving all this money to this group. I'm going to create my own group, right? And then it just, because there's no control. And then people would, I always loved because I started doing short trainings first, and people go, you can't do that. Typical NLP, according to whom?
Yeah.
Well, Richard Bandler says, I don't know, last time I checked, my driver's license says William Horton. It doesn't say Richard Bandler. So, yeah.
That's funny. So you were you were the first, or you were one of the first? Because I heard Tad also was criticized for running short trainings early on.
Somewhere I still got the letter where he wrote me going, you're making it too short. Because what it was, I was going to the National Guild when they wanted a certification training. I said, sure. How long? 4 days. Great. Okay. 4 days. Yeah, I can get it done. I go in thinking the military model, train them fast, train them hard, leave them wanting more. Right.
Yeah.
Because as you guys know, you're experts. You are absolute experts. If you got 25 people, 30 people in the room, or even more, you teach them all the information. How many people are going to really take it, use it, and move on?
Yeah.
20%, 10%.
Yeah.
Right. And those people are going to be hungry. Right. So what I did with the very first one is I broke the training up where I did 2 days before the conference. It was a 3-day conference. So like Wednesday and Thursday, I would intro NLP. And I'd say, okay, now you're staying for the conference. They had to stay for the conference. So it's a 3-day hypnosis conference. And I gave them all these assignments, like go mess with people, use your rapport skills, do all this, right? And then we would finish on a Monday and Tuesday. So in a way, it was really a 7-day training.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because they were in and out of classes all day. And oh my God, I got a lot of negative feedback from that one. And I actually liked it than doing the longer trainings,
I mean, was there a
trainings,
certification body? Like, was there some sort of authority who governed the standards, or was it just someone's dislike to shorter trainings and that was it?
well, and then all of this was even before, what's that? ANELPTA? Is that the name of the thing? No, International Association of NLP.
Yeah. Oh, has
Okay.
that been around for a while? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But see, a lot of us that were doing that, we predate them.
Yeah.
So when they come up, you got to do it this way. Who the hell are you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's like Tony Robbins. I was at a Tony Robbins event and somebody asked him, "You're not a member of the International Coaching Federation." He goes, "I was doing this 20 years before that guy was even thinking about doing coaching."
Yeah.
So, Will, did you say that Tad sent you a letter to say, hey, Will, you're doing it too short?
You're making it too short. Well, and I was teaching timeline and I didn't know he trademarked it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Putting a letter going cease and desist. And I'm like, I didn't know I didn't read his book. Right. So I think he got upset. But I'm like, he goes, "Well, who taught you?" I remember him asking me that. "Who taught you?" I go, "Probably the same guy that taught you." David Gordon, when he called him time book inspector, right? And so I changed the name. I go, "I respect you. You copyrighted, trademarked it. Good for you. I won't call it timeline therapy." I just, but yeah, so you had all these people trying to control stuff and again, a lot of people drawn into this world, NLP, hypnosis, even if they have the credentials from the, academic side, the people that get drawn into it are a little bit more rebel oriented.
Yeah. 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 Yep.
It's funny when you finally realize, hey, I don't need permission to do this stuff. Like it sort of dawns on you. Oh, well, I know it was this for me. Like you go through these trainings and especially now everything's very regimented and there's standards and there's tick boxes that you need to tick. And then you go through your master practitioner trainers training, you become a master trainer and you go, hold on a second. Like there are no rules. Like I can make up my own mechanisms. I can create my own modalities. I can adapt this for this particular niche. And I think that, yeah, for some people, which, I guess I was one of them is just going, I give myself permission to go out and do this stuff.
Oh yeah. One day, it's like, they wanted me to teach a master practitioner. And I'm like, yeah, I could do that. And then I looked at I firmly believe if you understand the basics,
Yeah.
there is no such thing as a master practitioner level technique. Right?
Yes.
And
yes.
I saw so I went and got some trainings and I'm like, no, it's just kind of the basic stuff kind of jazzed up. So, and Ted James added a lot of timeline therapy in him, which is cool.
Values and
different
the
stuff.
yeah.
So I'm like, so I started going, shit, what I'm going to do, I'm going to teach waking hypnosis. That's the biggest part of my master stuff is waking hypnosis with magic words, personal trance words, all this stuff that actually blows by the conscious factors of the mind and gets people to take action. Right? And then you take that with the basic. Now you're doing some magic.
So it sounded like the basic the basic NLP was more or less the same, but as the master, everyone had their own unique selling point for the master level, and they combined that with the master level NLP, and Tad had the timeline therapy, you had the waking hypnosis. I'm sure Diltz has this, and Michael Hall has this, and everyone has their own sort of branded advanced component. Was that sort of how it eventuated?
Yeah, you just nailed it because everybody kind of went like Michael Hall does his, what is he called, meta states, which I still can't figure out.
We talked
about neurosemantics. Is it neurosemantics?
Yeah, it makes no sense to me, to be honest with you. Whatever, right? But yeah, so we all did like our own little thing, and which brings in different perspectives and all that fun stuff.
Mm, mm. We have covered so much. The FBI probably could be its own podcast. Uh, when we went through the NLP trainings, words like MK Ultra were thrown around at the master practitioner level. Did you get it? Not you weren't involved as such, but do you have any insights on that level?
Yeah, if you find, if you break down, well, two things. One is if you learn this, you like the profiling aspect, taking a little bit of what they do, the FBI, the CIA, and that is they look at, what are your, right, one guy calls it social needs because we're all social creatures and we're driven by certain things, right? And if you learn this, it's really cool stuff. But if you really take it in, it makes you look at the world differently. Right? Even more than the NLP. I always say, learning NLP and hypnosis, you learn how to bring people out of trance because you walk around realizing everybody's full of crap. So it doesn't really matter. Let's do this. Let's do that. Right. But at this profiling thing, it's like what drives you. Right. And I don't know how many they have now, but they used to have like 6 to 8. Okay. What's your primary need? Like, is it significance? Do you want to be significant? We see people do that chase certificate. And I fit I fit all of these a little bit, but like significance, um, you chase certificates, you chase like, being significant, right? Politicians do this, people that just want to be significant, right? And if I know that, then it's easier to begin to influence you, right? But it also makes you wonder what drives that significance. Did you feel insignificant as a child, right? Then you have people that want to project strength or power, right? And I just be honest, it's like the guy that's got got a gut and he's not in shape, but maybe he was athletic in high school, but he's wearing the skin tight Captain America shirt. Because men, I'm like, or they wear like all the tap out gear, like they're competing in MMA, right? And it's like they want to project strength and power, right? So were they a wounded child, right?
Yeah.
Right. And then you have people, what's the other couple big ones? People want to be smart, right? You get this a lot in European hypnosis. Well, and I do this a lot, according to the research, right?
Yeah.
And I kind of backed off when somebody goes, well, tell me where to find this research. And, but people want to appear smart.
Yeah.
Whether they are or not, like whether you're truly significant or strong or smart, doesn't matter. You want to appear smart, right? So I can motivate you like how the FBI might do it like to get you to confess. It's like, look, you're smart, man. You beat everybody. You got this thing. You're a strong, powerful person. We just want to know how you did it. They can't wait to tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you prime them using the keywords.
And you have a couple others, acceptance, people that just die for social acceptance, right? And social approval, right? We just lived through.
That's a sheep. Is that sort of like the sheep mentality for that social? Were you about to say we've just lived through the biggest social approval experiment we've ever had?
Yeah, the whole COVID thing, right? And I would say, you had the people that just trust the science, and I hope I don't care, right? Just do this, just do that, right? And then the shaming and all that, it was to be part of the group, right? And then you had the people who go I'm not doing it. No, right? And I think from the people I've talked to, the people that fell into that acceptance, wanting to be part of the group doing this, if you go back to their high school years, they were the people that followed the rules. They were the people that, were the good boys, the good girls, and they just did that. Those that were fighting everything, they were the rebels. They're no,
yeah,
I'm going to go down no, I'm going to go down the aisle at the grocery store the wrong way. Right?
Yeah.
Like, and you would
I'm
question
going to
it.
get between the lines.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, but it showed how easy people will follow along.
And that was mind blowing for me, because I think at the time, I actually don't know what I thought. I thought that maybe more people would be more curious, at least, as to, the purpose of all those directions that were given, and why they were coming down so strong. Obviously it was very successful, because everyone went into lockstep, or for the most part, most people did. But I think, like you said, people wake up out of trances at different times. It does appear that people, are waking up out of a bit of a trance and being more curious now about all those things. And I think if for nothing else, it is, I think, worth being curious about how your own behavior can be shifted and changed so easily through, like you said, understanding these different levels of profile, of personality, of how the mind works. Like you said, the different language patterns that you can use, and the ways that you can combine words together to instantly have people, like you said, in that situation where the guy was getting investigated about a murder, and he was like, "Oh, you're the best. You beat them all. We just want to know how you did it." And he's like, "Oh, so freely telling them." It's just, it's fascinating to me that there are these keys, obviously these keys that you can use to unlock people's minds and direct them in a certain direction that you're willing from your standpoint. Do you believe in the idea of free will? No pun intended. But do you believe in the idea of, hey, we have this ability to have control over our own direction? Or do you think that after the work that you've done and what you've seen with some of the 3-letter agencies you've worked with, that, wow, people can be manipulated so easily? I do question whether or not free will exists.
That's a good point. Yeah. I think it's questionable at times, right? Because we're social creatures. Our biggest fear is to be ostracized from the group. I love to see them. Not even a little, what? One will die. The rest of the pack kills them right away.
Yeah.
And, but yeah, so, and I think that the awakening where you get your free will back is when you realize how easy it is to be manipulated. Right. And God knows with, this stuff now, right, that it's never ending. I mean, if you could design the perfect addiction mechanism,
That's it.
this is it.
Yeah.
Right. And here in America, I say we're already beginning to see it. When they allow sports booking online, right? Here you could bet, here they call it DraftKings and all these things.
It's here in Australia. It's out of control.
Oh, there's people that they didn't know. It's like, oh yeah, you just put in your credit card. That's so they can pay your winnings. Oh, that's so they can tap your credit card. Now you're broke.
Yeah.
But but how easy it is that we get, manipulated. And here in America, we just had another big example of everybody's fighting over trivial bullshit.
Yeah.
Look over here, look over there, look over here, right? And but your free will comes back when you begin to pull back and just realize, well, I can't control what happens. I can only control my response to it. And that's what we teach people, is how to control the response to it.
So do you think that free will and, I guess, awareness, conscious awareness, so, you're talking about being in a trance, being out of a trance, I guess being in a trance, you're more easily manipulated as you wake up, as you become more conscious, as you become more aware of your surroundings and everything going on, then I guess the strength of your free will increases. Would that be a fair way of putting it?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. It's like anything. The more you use it, I think you get more control over it. And the free will, like you say, you start getting the awareness, and the hardest thing to look at is yourself, right? And just oh, yeah, I guess I do all that, right? And then, because it's like, I remember I wrote a headline once because I was selling the class. And the headline, I love it to this day. It's like, why are there so many fat hypnotists? Right? And people got offended. And I'm like, I walk around these conferences and I'm wondering that. Because we project like, oh, we're going to, especially the people that are teaching mind control techniques.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but, you probably should be a little bit more presentable, in my opinion. But, again, now I'm aware of the fact that I guess I'm somewhat judgmental.
Did you ever work that question out? Did you ever figure it out?
Yeah, it's the ones that want to fix everybody else and not look at their own behavior.
Well, yeah.
Here's a story. I was at a conference, right? And I'm standing there at the Gill. And if you guys ever could come, you should come. It's shits and giggles.
So when is the conference?
Second weekend in August, just outside Boston.
Every year?
And, yep, every year. This will be their, well, it's their 75th year when they restarted the conference. I think it's like, this will be my 35th consecutive conference I'm going to. Right. It's a lot of fun. Nice little hotel, and there's restaurants near there. I don't like going to Vegas for a lot of trainings, but I get distracted. Squirrel. And,
I'm clear loud. Those are
when I was at that, I was at that conference, and they put out fruit in the morning because it's in August, and so I'm standing there. I'm eating an apple. Another guy's eating a piece of fruit, and we're talking. And some lady walks by. God love her, and I mean that from the bottom of my heart. And I could say she kind of waddled by, to be honest with you. But she has this plate, and it has like all these donuts and pastries, which they also had out on her plate. And then she walks by and she looks at me and this other guy and goes, "Oh, it's just so easy for you guys to stay thin." I'm like, well, you could have an apple. You don't have to have 3 sugar donuts at 8 o'clock.
What a suggestion.
Yeah, but my other one is like, would you trust a fat chain-smoking hypnotist?
Yeah. You can't trust a skinny chef is one I had in the hospitality industry.
Well, yeah. So it's like cool stuff.
One of the titles of one of your books, what was it, Kallum? You can't how to change, how to have power over someone.
I wrote it.
Mind control secrets. How to get others to do what you want, to have them think it was their idea.
Yes, that's
yeah.
Could you? When was that published? And could you? That title is obviously just raises the curiosity to 10 out of 10.
Hypnotists hate it. A lot of hypnotists hate it. And I'm like, why? That's what we
I think
do,
it's good
right?
marketing. Great marketing.
Yeah. And I should redo that and sell it again. But it's like, knowing what we know, even at the base level with the X-ray stuff that you had that's 3-dimensional, right? If I know what drives you, if I want to help you or help you make a decision, if I know what drives you, I know what your fears are, and I know your decision strategy, right? It's easier to implant the idea. So the true power is when you make it their idea. And most of us have people in our past.
Like Inception. Like Inception with Leonardo DiCaprio. Have you seen when they plant the idea like deeper and deeper into someone's unconscious mind, and the whole idea is that they plant it so deeply that they don't realize that it wasn't their idea to begin with. It was actually somebody else's.
Oh yeah. It's like, and most of us have had someone in our lives, a boss, maybe a parent, something that's like, you knew if you could get your dad to think it was his idea, you were going to, right? If not, nope, you're not going to, so if you could flip it to like, well, we just see it here with Donald Trump. He'll come up with something will be out there and he'll say it was his idea. And you're like, no, that was, to me, it just cracks me up, but it's like, and people from his first administration, and a lot of the politicians say, these are power-driven people. They're driven by significance and power and this and that. And if you want to help influence them, you have to make them think it was their idea. Right?
And your book describes a strategy on how to do that.
Yeah, it's a lot of the basic NLP techniques on like how to take it that way.
Yeah. That should be an international bestseller.
This is a great time to read. This is probably a great time to do it, a second edition, because this is really coming to the forefront of people's worlds again.
That's why I'm on this call. Now you've just helped me focus what I want to do next. I'm going to redo the NLP and the mind control techniques using the secrets of the FBI and the CIA, the things they didn't want me to teach. I could just
that's it.
I didn't have to sign an NDA or
that's the money. That's the money one there.
Yes.
They didn't want me to teach, but I can now because it's been long enough.
The coolest story I ever heard, there was a guy who was teaching remote viewing back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
And he would walk in the room and he'd have these two big guys with him, right? And they'd have the little earpieces on and the mirrored sunglasses because the government didn't want him to teach this. And they were going to kill him. And I'm sitting there going, that's interesting. And somebody asked me a question. I go, because they're like, yeah, well, those guys are probably like ex-SEALs or Rangers or something. And I was around that world. And I'm like, I doubt that. Why? If they were true Navy SEALs and you want to hire them to guard somebody, if they know the CIA wants them dead, they're backing out quickly.
Yeah.
And the CIA will take out the whole plane, for God's sakes.
There would have been a couple of bouncers from the local bar.
Yeah, it's just big guys, shaved head. It's like my other business, theater. It's like, just got to have the look. You might be talking like very, oh, how are you today? Oh, that's glorious.
Have you read Ingo Swann's book on remote viewing? Because that sounds very similar to a story that he was sharing in there.
Oh yeah, I love that remote viewing stuff.
Yeah, powerful.
And again, it's the collective consciousness, and then you go into the next level. Like if you get aware and you open up, your free will happens. I think is when you have that awareness and you open up to the collective consciousness, the higher power, whatever term you want to use, and you basically download the information.
So you think there's validity to that investigation into like remote viewing? Because there's been some incredible things that have happened, both in looking in lockboxes inside of vaults in different countries that have come back to be, correct, and even looking at things on different planets that were now looked at through satellites that they'd found and to be true. Have you had much experience with that, or do you believe it's valid?
Well, you're not going to believe this, but I got to tell you a story. I was at the National Guild of Hypnotists, right? And it's August of 2001. And I was teaching just a 1 or 2 hour intro into remote viewing, right? Do you know the protocol where you get some coordinates in your, they give you a,
you empty your mind, take the coordinates.
So your mind's empty and the person says, okay, your target is 122764, and it's in the envelope, and they know what the target is. You don't know. So you download, people think you go to a site. And the way I was trained, no, you just download this information. So I was doing this fun thing.
So some people that I know that they're actually trying to project their awareness out to the destination. But what you're saying is that the information is downloaded, you don't project your consciousnness out. You download it from the higher mind, the higher consciousness.
Yeah, and this, when I learned it too, this was the internet was new. And they even said then it's like hooking up to the internet. Your computer doesn't go to Australia with you guys, but it's downloaded, and then the hard part's decoding it, right? And get your imagination out of the way. You're decoding the information. So anyway, I'm doing this little training. We're having fun. We look for a whale, and a couple of hard targets. And I put out there was, the target was WMD next usage. Now, when I did this in August of 2001, very few people had ever heard of the term WMD, weapon of mass destruction. Now it's common vernacular. And what was scary is, of course, in September, when the attacks happened here in the States, people that were in the training go, yeah, I went back and I looked, and I had like New York Yankees, which is close. It's New York,
Mm.
right? Like I saw a basically it was the Pentagon, but they go, no. They thought it was like something with devil worship. So it was a pentagram. No, it was a pentagon. And, all the places that got attacked, they kind of knew. So it kind of scared me, but people go like, well, you should have called the government. I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that
Yeah.
one went on like turned. Plus a lot of this, it's easier looking backwards.
High insights 2020.
And
Yeah.
the guy, it wasn't Ego Swan, it was what was his name? But he taught it. He said he thought remote viewing was great for finding targets, but not necessarily people, because people always move.
Mm.
I mean, I may have the target of where you guys are right now, and by the time I decode it, you went to dinner or breakfast. What the hell is morning there? Lunch.
Yeah, morning.
Right?
Yeah.
And so this guy would say it was good for finding, but like you said, they had the one where they found that, was it an Army general that got kidnapped and they found him?
Through remote viewing.
Yeah. And for decades, those remote viewers are saying, Osama bin Laden is not in the mountains where you think he is.
Mm.
He's in a major metropolitan area, which then leads me to wonder, did the government know? They just didn't want to say they knew?
Yeah.
Yeah. Will, I can't help but notice, but you have quite a spiritual streak, if you don't mind me saying. Was that developed over time? Excuse me. Or
Bless you, my son.
was that developed over time yourself, or did you take spiritual courses, or it was a bit of this, a bit of that, and you formed your own ideology about what's out there?
Well, yeah, great question. And to be honest with you, it kind of came out of when I got into recovery, right?
Mm.
Because in the traditional 12-step world, that's a big base part of it is your spirituality. Right?
Yeah.
Mm.
And even the research says the easiest way for someone to have a true change in their personality is to have a psychic change. And they don't mean like psychic, they mean like a spiritual awakening, right?
Mm.
And then the second part is to follow through on it, right? And so that's where it comes from. And the more I look at it from this other viewpoint is, like you say, it's like the collective consciousness, is we're all connected at some level, right? And so, yeah, it's a base part of my life.
Yeah.
Is it in the traditional sense of, because in the 12-step process, it's definitely a very Christian orientated religious practice or spiritual understanding, or has it developed, or do you see it all as not being different to one another? You see it being the same?
Yeah, and I think, I would say too, at least from my interpretation of being around it for 4 decades, is the 12-step program isn't as Christian as people think it is, because they never
Okay.
they use higher power. They're the ones that broke from that, right? Back, the biggest change they made when it was taken off, they took out, turn your life over to God. Basically, they turn it into a higher power that we all can have different viewpoints.
Right.
And so, that's my thing. And it's evolving.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
don't approach it like there's that. And when you look at the text, whether it's the Bible or the Quran or those things called
Bhagavad.
yeah, those things, it's metaphorical, right? And unfortunately, I think the problem happens where people take like the Bible and it's a metaphor and they turn it into, no, it's literal,
It's literal. Yeah.
right? Like Daniel in the lion's den, he was faced, with these starving lions for his faith. And so, thrown in the den, he's going to get eaten. And his connection, the small, still voice within told him, just turn your back on the lions and look at your savior. And the savior was freedom. And as he turns, the lions go to sleep, right? And I think it was Neville Goddard, the first guy I listened to, and he talked about, it's a metaphor. It's a metaphor of don't focus on your problems, focus on the solution. You know, if you're broke, it's money. Don't keep thinking about you ain't got no money. Turn and look at the, you know, prosperity and this and that. And so that it's all metaphorical. And that's what we do with hypnosis and NLP. Going back to Erickson, it's all metaphors and stories and this and that. And then people can read into it what they think.
And I really don't think you can dive into the depths of the unconscious mind without uncovering some sort of spiritual nature, you know, your own spiritual nature or the spiritual connection as such. And, you know, speaking to what you just said with the metaphorical teachings, the unconscious mind is symbolic in nature. It's the way it interprets and processes our reality. And that's why I think a lot of those great old texts speak volumes, because they're like a compression file. They compress so much teaching and learning and information to such a short amount of space, really, even though some of the books are quite thick, because they're told in such a symbolic way. So yeah, I think that's the nature of what it is to be human, is to derive meaning out of symbols. And yes, that's an interesting take.
Yeah, I love that stuff.
So what's next for you, Will? Where you're in Florida, do you still travel? Do you still teach NLP? You're in theater, you have a theater company. What's next for you?
Well, I've been doing a lot of films. Back yesterday, day before yesterday, I filmed a horror film. For some reason, I play serial killers and crazy people.
In the movies, right?
Yeah, and that's a true passion of mine.
Yeah.
Right. And I used to do a lot of theater. I don't do that as much, mainly because of the time constraints, right? You do a play, you got 4 or 5 weeks of rehearsal, a month or 6 weeks of shows. So you've just taken 3 months out of your life, which is okay, except for, as it happened to a friend of mine, he was doing a play, and about halfway through, he gets cast in a movie. But he signed a contract, and he goes, I can't quit the theater, but he lost the opportunity. So what's next for me is I'm going to continue to do that. And on this stuff, the NLP and the training side, and I think things happen for a reason. And you guys have tweaked my mind.
I love the name FBI, the things they didn't want me to teach.
Yeah. And I want to jazz up a new basic NLP based on behavior profiling and deception detection. Right? Because like back in the day, people learned NLP and they say, oh yeah, if you move your eyes this way, it means you're lying. There's nothing to do with that. Here's how you notice if someone's really lying, right?
Would you love to do a brief intro to maybe our audience on that topic? Because I know they would eat that up. They would love it.
The deception detection?
Yeah. TM that.
Okay. I could, well, it's like.
You could be the deception detector.
Yeah.
Yeah.
T-shirts, hats, everything.
Well, when, people talk about the eyes, right? And that's true. But what you got to remember is, the eyes, the biggest thing you can notice in the eyes is blink rate. When you're nervous, and it has to do with stress response. I don't know if you're lying or telling the truth. It's a measure of, are you under stress? Right? So the couple of the biggest ones would be like blink rate. You have a tendency to speed up your blink rate, right? And then the other thing, if you get asked a question, is there much of a pause before they answer, right? And what do they say right afterwards, right? Are they buying time? That's a good question. That lets you know they're thinking. How can I work? Doesn't mean they're lying. It could be stress, right? And again, when I teach this, I say, don't think about politicians or lawyers because they're trained different. Like generally, they would say, if I ask you a question, so Conor, where were you last Thursday at 4 p.m.? Right?
Probably, yeah.
But what a lawyer would say, well, to the best of my knowledge, I
Oh,
was
yeah.
at the
Yeah.
office,
Yeah.
right? Politicians will do that because they're coached in that. Most of us aren't, right?
Currently, I
and-
believe
yeah,
I
currently,
was.
which is actually a good statement, to the best of my knowledge, right? And only a politician could get away with when they get caught in a lie. Well, I misremembered it, right? The other thing is when, like, you ask somebody a question, and you see that either of you guys got kids.
Yeah, we have 3 kids each.
Okay. How old?
I have 7, 9, and 11.
And then I go 4 to 8 weeks.
Okay. Well, you got the little ones. But as they move into adolescence, right? What you're going to find if you ask a question, how could you ask me that, Dad? Right?
Right.
Which is
Yeah.
not answering the question. Did you do your homework? How can you ask me that? Well, they're
Yeah.
the defense mechanism, right? And it's a lot of this we kind of know, but we don't really look at it. So blink rate, right? What's the other big one? Oh, another big one is not just it's not a shoulder shrug. It's one shoulder shrug.
Oh,
It's like,
Yeah.
yeah. And
I've noticed the scratch of the arm.
Sorry.
The scratch. Okay. Go for it.
Right.
oh yeah. Well, and then and for a while they taught it, and then they made fun of it. Now it's coming back about like if you rub your nose.
I feel like every karate teacher I ever had did the one shoulder shrug.
Yeah.
I felt like they were adjusting some sort of tension or aggression or frustration.
Yeah. Or they're getting ready to say something that they know is bullshit.
Or throw a
Well,
punch.
Yeah. And then people that use what they call, what's it called? Perception qualifiers, right? Like, you ask somebody a question. So, Connor, where were you, what did you do? Well, frankly, to tell you the truth.
Yeah. They tell you the
Right.
truth. To be honest with you, is
I'll
huge.
be honest with you. Tell
I'm
you the
glad
truth.
to be honest.
It's big down here.
Honestly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or you ask them a question. Well, at the office the other day, $40 disappeared, right? And they tell you like, well, everyone knows I'm an honest person.
Yeah.
They'll bring up a convincing statement like,
Yeah.
I'm an honest person. I'm the deacon of my church.
Yeah. Literally is a big one with my kids at the moment. They're saying, I literally didn't do it.
Literally.
What does that mean? I literally didn't do it.
Yeah.
Just
So we would love to have you back to give some more information about deception detection, and where can someone find you if they're like, this lights me up. I want to talk to Will more about this. I want to learn from him. I want to be around Will. How do they find you?
Is 2 websites are the easiest.
Okay.
Well, 3, but I'll give one is nfnlp.com. That's like the training organization, which I've the internet, as you guys know, changed everything because, it's easy to get training. And the other one is Dr. Will Horton, DrWillHorton, drwillhorton.com. And that's where I put up a lot of these little classes I do.
Okay.
And like I say, I think in June of this year, I'm going to redo my basic NLP, but it's going to be advanced, kind of to tag into the mind control using NLP and the secrets of the FBI and the CIA. So it'll be the basic NLP techniques with behavior profiling and deception detection. So that if you go to drwillhorton.com, there'll be info there. In fact, I'm kind of redoing parts of it now. But I'm working on that class because I was asked to teach. I think it's the first weekend in March in Las Vegas. The National Guild has a 2-day mini conference. And I'll be teaching half a day on behavior profiling and deception detection.
Fantastic.
I
And
think
that's,
people want that information.
they're good.
It's,
Hungry.
Yeah, it's your point of difference too. I think it's like that's where your brilliance comes through. So I can't wait to see it. I can't wait to see the second edition of the book. And we look forward to hopefully having you back and talking to you more about some of these different points that we brought up today.
Yeah, cool. I love talking about this stuff.
You can
I
tell
always
you get
say,
lit up. It's great to see.
When I first learned it, it didn't just save my life; it gave me a life worth living. I mean, I've been blessed to get. Yeah, I always say, I'm one of the luckiest men alive. Actually, I stole that from a guy I worked for a while. He'd always say, I'm the luckiest man alive. So I started saying it as I'm one of the luckiest men alive. Right? I've literally been all over the world. Right? I'm the son of a steel worker and a cleaning lady. It wasn't in my world to go do any of this stuff. And then to go back and reignite the old passion of trying to act in film. And so, and just learning this and sharing it. And each time I share it, I learn something about myself.
Yeah.
Right. And I get little tidbits like when Kallum said about the mind control. I'm like, yeah, you know what? Somebody asked me 3 months ago, you should rewrite that and update it and just do it like volume 2. The secrets I can finally tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be lining up for that one.
Magic. Well, I will tune out of Facebook. If you could stay on for a second, Will.
Sure.
Thank you very much for joining us. Absolute pleasure. Unplugged podcast number 37. Absolute delight. Thank you, Kallum. Thank you, Will. We'll see everyone soon. Bye-bye.
Bye. Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged Podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting. If you are a practitioner, a coach, or a trainer in the alternative therapy modality space, the Forever Client Matrix is something that we've modeled in the last 30 combined years, both Conor and my experience. And we've turned it into a 2-day intensive, and we want to give you a preview of that Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely.
We want to make the bar for them to enter into that program very, very low and have them get incredible results.
I've sold about $40 million worth, and together we've sold about $100 million worth with our teams.
That's right. We believe that trust and reliability is the currency of the future. So if you want to turn every transaction into a transformational experience, if you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.